Did you know that most people have completely backwards ideas about what makes someone truly intelligent? We tend to assume that smart people know everything, that they dominate every conversation, that they're constantly busy doing important things, and that they're absolutely certain about all their opinions. But here's what the research actually shows, and this is going to flip your understanding upside down. The most intelligent people you'll ever encounter are defined not by what they do, but by specific things they absolutely refuse to do. And by the time we get to number 5 on this list, I promise you're going to look at your own daily habits in a completely different way. That 5th one especially, because it's something almost every single person does every single day, and it's quietly draining your potential without you even noticing. Cognitive psychologists have spent decades studying what separates high-functioning thinkers from everyone else, and the results are consistently surprising. It's not the things they do that set them apart most dramatically, it's the patterns of behavior they systematically avoid. So let's get into it. But first, subscribe to our channel. The first thing highly intelligent people never do is fake their way through conversations with knowledge they don't actually have. And look, I know this sounds simple, but the implications go way deeper than you might think. Most of us have been in a situation where someone asks us something and we genuinely don't know the answer. What happens in that moment? For most people, there's this almost automatic social pressure to say something, anything that sounds credible. We give vague half-answers. We pivot to related things we do know about. We speak confidently about things we've heard mentioned once somewhere. And we do all of this because saying, "I don't know," feels like admitting some kind of personal failure. But here's what's fascinating about genuinely intelligent people. They don't experience "I don't know" as a failure at all. Those 3 words are completely comfortable for them. They'll say them without hesitation, without embarrassment, and often with genuine curiosity about what the right answer actually is. Why? Because their sense of confidence isn't built on the illusion of knowing everything. It's built on trusting the accuracy of what they do know. They understand that pretending to know something you don't is actually the stupider move, because you're far more likely to make bad decisions, give bad advice, and eventually get caught, than if you just admitted the gap in your knowledge up front. Research in cognitive psychology calls this intellectual humility, and it turns out to be one of the strongest predictors of long-term learning and good judgment. When you're not busy defending false certainty, your mind is free to actually take in new information. Intelligent people see their knowledge gaps not as threats to their identity, but as open questions waiting to be explored. They value being accurate far more than they value appearing knowledgeable, and that shift in priority makes an enormous difference. The second thing highly intelligent people never do is treat every conversation as a battle they need to win. Now pay attention here, because this one reveals something fundamental about how real intelligence actually operates. Think about people you know who seem to argue about everything, who can never just let something go, who always needs to correct everyone around them and be the last word in every discussion. Here's the uncomfortable truth about those people. That behavior isn't a sign of intelligence. It's a sign of insecurity dressed up as confidence. It's ego defending itself by constantly proving it's right. Truly intelligent people are remarkably selective about when and why they engage in debate. They don't feel this compulsive need to correct every factual error they hear. They don't try to convince people who have already made up their minds. They don't engage with people who are arguing in bad faith, who are more interested in winning than in actually finding out what's true. And people sometimes interpret this as them not caring or backing down, but that's not it at all. They're just making a calculated judgment about where their mental energy is actually worth investing. When intelligent people do engage deeply in a discussion, it's because they genuinely want to understand something better, to test an idea against a sharp counterargument, or to arrive at a more accurate picture of reality together with someone else. They're not performing intelligence for an audience. They're using it as a tool for genuine understanding, and perhaps most importantly, they're comfortable sitting with disagreement. They don't need everyone to agree with them by the end of a conversation. They can leave a discussion still uncertain, still processing, and be completely okay with that. Now here's where things get genuinely fascinating. And this is the insight that sits right at the heart of everything we're talking about today. Highly intelligent people are relentlessly committed to learning, but they have a very specific relationship with knowledge that sets them apart from people who just consume a lot of information. Because here's something that the digital age has created that didn't exist before: the illusion of expertise through exposure. You watch a few videos about a topic, you read a handful of articles, you pick up the vocabulary, and suddenly you feel like you understand something deeply. And most people stop right there and start speaking about that topic as though they're authorities on it. But intelligent people have this almost instinctive awareness of the gap between being exposed to information and actually understanding it deeply. Psychologists call this epistemic humility, and it goes beyond just admitting you don't know things. It means understanding that even in areas where you do have genuine knowledge, there are still vast dimensions you haven't explored. It means recognizing that real expertise takes years of sustained effort, repetition, failure, and correction. It means that the more you actually learn about something, the more clearly you see how much you still don't know, which is the exact opposite of how shallow knowledge works. This is what makes intelligent people perpetual learners. Not because they're always starting from scratch, but because they're always aware that their current understanding is incomplete. They ask better questions than other people because they know what they don't know. They're harder to fool by confident nonsense because they understand what genuine expertise looks and sounds like. The third thing highly intelligent people never do is let the emotional temperature of the present moment make their decisions for them. And I want to be really precise about this, because there's a misconception I want to cut through immediately. Intelligent people are not emotionally disconnected. They're not cold, they're not robotic, they're not people who suppress their feelings and operate purely on logic. In fact, many highly intelligent people feel emotions with enormous intensity. The difference is in what happens between feeling the emotion and taking action. Neuroscience has done a tremendous amount of work on what's called emotional regulation, which is essentially the brain's ability to experience a feeling fully while not being completely hijacked by it. And highly intelligent people tend to have well-developed capacity here, sometimes naturally and sometimes through deliberate practice over years. What this looks like in real life is that when they're furious about something, they don't fire off that angry message right away. When they're euphoric about some exciting opportunity, they don't immediately commit to everything without thinking through the consequences. When they're in a dark emotional valley, they don't make permanent decisions about their life from that temporary low point. They've learned to create what you might call a pause between stimulus and response. And in that pause, they ask themselves really important questions. Is this feeling giving me important information about my values, or is it just a reaction to circumstances that will look completely different in a week? Am I considering this action because it's genuinely the right move, or because it would feel satisfying in this moment? That self-questioning isn't weakness or hesitation. It's one of the most powerful cognitive habits you can develop, because the decisions that we most deeply regret are almost always ones we made at peak emotional intensity. The fourth thing highly intelligent people never do is build their social world entirely around people who agree with everything they think. This one cuts against some very deep human instincts, so let's take a second with it. Every one of us has a natural pull toward people who share our views, who validate our beliefs, who make us feel understood and correct. That's not a character flaw. It's basic social psychology. We are wired to seek belonging and agreement. But highly intelligent people understand that this instinct, if left completely unchecked, is intellectually crippling. Real thinking happens under pressure. Your ideas become sharper when you have to actually defend them against smart, well-intentioned people who see things differently. You discover the flaws in your reasoning, not when everyone nods along, but when someone with a different perspective asks you the question you hadn't thought to ask yourself. Intelligent people don't just tolerate this kind of challenge. They actively seek it out. They surround themselves with people who will respectfully but genuinely push back on their ideas, who bring frameworks and experiences they don't have, who are willing to tell them when they're wrong. The psychologist Carol Dweck spent years studying the difference between what she calls a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. People with a fixed mindset see their intelligence as a static thing to be protected and defended. Being challenged or proven wrong feels like an attack on their identity. But people with a growth mindset see their intelligence as something that develops through challenge and correction. Being shown you're wrong isn't humiliating, it's informative. Highly intelligent people overwhelmingly operate from a growth mindset, which is exactly why they're not threatened by disagreement. They're energized by it. They come out of those challenging conversations smarter than they went in. The fifth thing highly intelligent people never do, and this is the one I promised would make you rethink your own habits, is to confuse being busy with being effective. In the culture we live in right now, busyness has become almost a status symbol. People compare how few hours of sleep they got, how packed their calendar is, how they barely have time to breathe. And there's this embedded assumption that the busier you are, the more important and productive you must be. Highly intelligent people see right through this, and research on high performance backs them up completely. They understand a distinction that most people never make, which is the difference between doing things right and doing the right things. You can be incredibly efficient, optimizing every minute of your schedule, ticking off dozens of tasks every day, and still be making almost zero progress toward anything that genuinely matters because you're efficient at the wrong things. Intelligent people are not obsessed with efficiency first. They're obsessed with effectiveness first. Before they worry about how to do something, they ask whether it's worth doing at all. They ruthlessly prioritize the small number of activities that actually move the needle on their real goals. And they're genuinely comfortable saying no to everything else, even things that look important from the outside. And here's the part most people find hardest to accept. They treat rest, reflection, and unstructured thinking time as non-negotiable, not as rewards they've earned when the work is done, not as guilty indulgences, but as actual components of high performance. The neuroscience on this is clear. Creative insight, complex problem solving, and the kind of deep pattern recognition that characterizes brilliant thinking don't happen when your brain is constantly task switching and input processing. They happen in the spaces between. The most valuable thinking often happens when you're not technically doing anything. Intelligent people protect those spaces fiercely. So when you see someone who seems to have more free time than their equally talented peers, who seems less frantic, more deliberate, more present in each thing they do, don't assume they're less serious or less driven. They might just be operating at a level of clarity most people never reach because they stopped letting busyness masquerade as purpose. Now let's pull all 5 of these together and see what they actually look like as a unified picture. An intelligent person admits what they don't know, because truth matters more to them than image. They don't fight pointless battles because they've made the distinction between real discourse and ego performance. They understand the massive gap between consuming information and genuinely knowing something. They feel their emotions deeply but don't outsource major decisions to temporary emotional states. They actively seek out people who challenge them rather than just validate them. And they ask whether something is worth doing at all before they ask how to do it efficiently. What unifies all of these is a particular relationship with reality. It's choosing accuracy over comfort, choosing growth over the appearance of already being grown, choosing depth over the feeling of depth. None of these are things you either have or you don't. Every single one of them can be cultivated. Sit down and ask yourself honestly, what are the 2 or 3 things that, if I did them really well and consistently, would actually move my life forward? And then look at how much of your current week is actually dedicated to those things versus how much is just activity that feels productive because it keeps you occupied. That honest accounting is uncomfortable, but it is extraordinarily clarifying. True intelligence isn't about impressing people with what you know. It's not about winning conversations or being the most certain voice in the room. It's a set of orientations, a way of being in relationship with your own mind and with the world, that consistently produces better thinking, better decisions, and genuine growth over time. And the most fascinating thing of all is that the smartest people you know probably demonstrate these, not because they consciously decided to follow a list of rules, but because they've simply learned to value accuracy and growth more than they value looking smart in the moment. So here's my question for you. Which one of these 5 hits closest to home for you? Which one are you working on? Or honestly, which one have you been avoiding thinking about? Drop it in the comments below, because that conversation down there is always where the most interesting thinking actually happens. If this video added something real to your day, consider sharing it with someone in your life who you think would genuinely get something from it. And if you want to keep going deeper on how the mind works, be sure to subscribe to our channel.